Protected scenarios. Protected flirting scenarios. Herd protectiveness. Unnecessary herd protectiveness. So, you see someone you want to talk to, like someone you're attracted to, and you see them and you don't actually approach them. You can tell that, like, you're attracted to them, you want to talk to them, you want to flirt with them, you want to hang out with them, but they're, like, in a herd of overprotective, overbearing people. They're in a little collective, or they're just with people, and so no, like, flirting or anything can occur. Because of the way society's set up and everything, flirting has become, like, compliment, greetings have all become demonized by the feminist far left indoctrination that has got into people's heads. And there were things that pushed it that way, like safety culture and the whole don't talk to strangers thing, which is appropriate if you're talking about kids, but is not appropriate if you're talking about adults, because adults should be talking to strangers in order to meet new people. And if you've indoctrinated them to believe that they should act like a child their whole life and avoid talking to strangers and things, then they're just stuck in that mindset, that phase, that indoctrination forever. And there's this whole protectiveness, like overprotectiveness of parents to their adult children, you know, to 20-year-olds up, even higher than that these days, where kids just never grow up into adults. Like, you've got someone who's like 20 years old and they never grow up and they never get a chance to meet anyone because of their overbearing, and it happens with friends too, it's not just family, and they move around in protection groups because there's this weird fear. Like, one of my exes, like, she said I would never go camping on my own, or I would never go out at night on the streets on my own, or I would never go out at night past a certain time, just because of this weird fear indoctrination that was put into her head, that, like, even though now she's an adult, she's scared to go out because there's this weird false impression of the world that everyone's dangerous, and it's a sexist thing, like a misandrist thing, because it's a lot of it's geared towards men, like that men will attack you or something if you just, like, go out at night, or if you go camping, or if you go walking in the wilderness, or and then they bring in this, they use phrases like misogynist, and they use phrases like creepy, and they misuse these phrases, so they're just like everything, so, and everything to do with men, and everything to do with strangers. So nobody that's an adult that's raised under feminism has any ability to meet people or be free in the way that they used to in, say, the 20th century, like the 90s and before that. And it's because of, like, what feminism teaches people, and also, you know, to a certain extent what traditionalist conservatives teach people, like to be fearful of those who are around them, and to be fearful of men in particular. And then there's a racial element, to be fearful of white men, although in some other groups you have a racial element that is to be fearful of black men, but it's mostly men. And so they'll move around in, like, even though they're adult now, they're not kids anymore, they'll move around in herds. They won't go out alone, they won't want to meet strangers, they won't go to places where there's a chance that they could be talked to or met. And, like, if they go on the street, there's this block thing that they put up, which in some ways and places and situations is appropriate, because you want to block certain people from talking to you if they are obviously dangerous. Like, you see someone who's, like, obviously drunk or very aggressive, like a chav, or they might be on drugs and you have very strong reason to believe they're on drugs or something. Circumstances like that, or when it's obvious that there's a violent person on the street where you don't want to be approached. But I mean, you can deflect people smartly in the way that you talk to them. where you can talk to lots of strangers, but you can only show a part of yourself and only give the impression that talking to them will only go so far, I guess, because of, like, they're not gonna. It's a difficult one to discuss. A person who's drunk is not going to get very far talking to you, that sort of thing. Like, there are legitimate people like that to defend against, but for the most part, there's a whole lot of strangers not meeting each other who could be meeting each other, and they could be, forming relationships and forming bonds, but because of the overprotection and the fearfulness, that makes all men seem like the drunk man, or make all men seem like the dangerous, violent man on the street. It's a form of collectivism, I guess. It doesn't acknowledge individualism. It treats all men as a faction that all do the same as each other, no matter who they are. And yeah, the herd dynamics of that is awful, and I don't know, I probably have more to say on the matter that's not coming to me at the moment, but it's just an interesting subject to think about. People are moving around in protection herds rather than moving around individually and assessing things for themselves and being brave and letting themselves be vulnerable, not to attack, but vulnerable on purpose in a way that they can control to conversation and to potential partners, potential friends as well. And because people are so afraid of everyone they meet, I think a lot of those meetings that could be happening just don't happen anymore. And that might be a reason why we're a lot more isolated and a lot more distrustful of each other and aggressive to each other, strangers-wise. When people are out and about, you can see that the social dynamics of how people are now is completely different from what I remember when I was growing up in the 80s and 90s. It's a whole different thing, and I wish I could get back to what that was rather than what everything is now, which is just this weird, fearful behaviour in public places. And you see these, I don't know, it's like people have bodyguards. They're not armed bodyguards, but they're like social bodyguards sort of thing, and they don't ever leave those chaperones, and so they've trapped themselves basically forever in this bubble, and they can see experiences and opportunities just flash in front of them and pass them by, never to be seen again. They just miss them because of how they move around in the world. They're too scared to move around in the world and defend themselves. They have to rely on little collectivist herds to defend them from things that aren't necessarily even going to be dangerous to them. Yeah. There's a topic vlog subject for you. Unnecessary protective herds. Kind of